Developing news in two recent armed bank robberies. We're learning more about the man charged with the crimes and his criminal past, which is lengthy. Western Mass News reporter Paris Dunford has the story after digging deeper.
Luis Ruiz was already in custody at the beginning of this month when he was charged with armed robbery. Police say he robbed the Berkshire Bank in Longmeadow and the Key Bank in East Longmeadow. Western Mass News obtained the court documents that further detail the events that unfolded on those days. Police say they responded to Berkshire Bank in Longmeadow on January 30th for reports of a robbery that just occurred. The documents revealed the suspect, masked in a black hoodie, approached a bank teller and pulled out a note and placed it on the counter. It read, $7,000 now, no questions. Fast forward to February 2nd, police responded to Key Bank in East Longmeadow, where another robbery took place. The suspect in this one was also masked and showed a note to the teller that read, "Money now, $5,000. I really need it or I die." The getaway vehicle was described as a gray Toyota Camry. Police say in the Berkshire Bank robbery, surveillance video showed the same car driving towards the bank about 12 minutes prior to the robbery. On February 4th, Springfield police arrested Luis Ruiz on domestic assault charges. The victim in this crime owned the car that police connected to the bank robberies, and that led to the arrest of Ruiz on the armed robbery charges. Police also connected Ruiz to another bank robbery in Enfield, Connecticut that occurred on January 23rd. Western Mass News obtained court documents that detail Ruiz's criminal history dating back multiple years. In August of 2002, he was charged with larceny under $250. In July of 2003, shoplifting and possession of a hypodermic needle, typically used for drugs. The next month, he was charged with distributing a Class B drug and a drug violation near a school or park. In August of 2004, a trespassing charge, and in September of 2005, assault and battery. Now, fast forward to 2018. In August, he faced multiple charges, including assault and battery on a household member. And that next month in September, an unarmed robbery charge. His most recent charges before this case was in October of last year, assault and battery with a dangerous weapon and threat to commit a crime. He was released with a promise to reappear in court on the condition that he has no contact with the victim in that case. He was awaiting a pretrial hearing in March when he was arrested on new domestic assault charges and the armed robbery charges.
That was Paris Dunford reporting. As for the most recent charge of armed robbery, Ruiz has not yet been arraigned. However, he is still being held since his bail was revoked for previous charges.